Hey, Jamie.
Hey, Usha.
Crying. I cried a lot when I was a kid. I was a big crier. And it didn't matter what people thought, I just cried. I was lucky that way. So I just released whenever I needed to embarrass myself to heck by doing that. But there was, I remember when I was 16 once, I was in college. I had entered college at that time, and I wasn't quite 16. It was towards the end of my college period, so I was a little older by then. Trying to get my transcripts. Something went wrong, and I was at this registrar's office, and some information hadn't finished. They hadn't gotten some information or something, and I was sitting there bawling because I needed that transcript immediately, and I felt so foolish. And my mother cries easily too, so I'm used to seeing tears around. My father didn't cry as much. He was a very affectionate man, yet at the same time, he also liked to tease. And he's a very charming, very likable, very loving man, but he liked to tease. And whenever I cried, he thought that one way to get me to stop crying, which is what I think people tended to do in my family. They shouldn't cry, arade, my mother would say in my language, which means don't cry. And my father would find other ways to try and get us to stop crying by teasing us, by saying, oh, you look really sweet when you cry, or some such silly thing, not really acknowledging the feelings. So feelings were not something that were really easily acknowledged. And so I felt very, very alone when I was a kid. I'm very connected to my parents. My father died last year, but I've been very connected to my parents after I became an adult. But when I was a kid and when I was an adolescent, I just did not feel connected because I never felt I could ever express my feelings to them. I wish I could have felt more connected. I think I might not have been such an odd child when I was a kid. I definitely was an oddball. I had all kinds of complexes. I thought, and I didn't have very many friends. I thought that nobody liked me, all that kind of stuff. That all changed in my teens when I decided, okay, in order to have friends, I need to be a friend. It all started from here. So I started, really thinking about how to be a friend. But, it would have been a whole lot easier if it just came more easily. And it would have been easier if they had known how to really listen to feelings. But I can't blame them either. I don't think they ever had that happen to them. I don't think anybody, my mother certainly didn't have her feelings listened to. She had to work very, very hard when she was a kid. So I can understand all that. Yeah. Now as an adult, I totally understand and totally empathize. But, what it did for me as a child, and it's not their fault, it's just how it was I didn't really feel like I was listened to. But fortunately, I cried really easily, so it didn't seem to matter. I just cried and I was able to release, and it made me feel better usually afterwards. And so I'm comfortable with my daughter crying. But I just watched a video of her and I recently when she was about 2.5 years old, and we'd gone to Yellowstone. And so here she was, upset about something, and she was starting to cry, and I'm telling her, don't cry. And I never realized that I had said that to her. I don't have a memory of saying it to her, but there it's on the video. And I'm saying, don't cry. So obviously my influence from my parents came over and has influenced what I'm saying to my daughter. But then over the years, I actually began to understand also on my own that it helps to release, and definitely hand in hand helped a lot with all the stay listening. And I've done a lot of stay listening with her. A lot. She has raged, she has become angry, she's thrown things around, and I've held her, and she's cried and cried and cried and cried. And I know she felt safe with me during every one of those sessions, even though she would resist. It was hard. And it still is hard. She's 15 and it isn't over yet. The other night, it took 3-4 hours of crying, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. She was resisting me the whole time, and finally for the last half an hour, this big girl, she's now a half inch taller than me. She finally flopped into my arms, and she was like a little baby in an embryo position, and I was holding her. It was a huge amount of crying that she did that day. And I'm fortunately really comfortable around the crying, so I'm a lot more comfortable about her crying than I am about her anger. When she gets angry, if I'm able to stay calm, I'm fine, but it's not always the case that I stay calm when that happens. So, talking about it really helps me.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you like a little question?
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe not about bumps this time.
How about some animals with interesting looking fur?
Oh, I love wolves. Actually, my daughter loves wolves, and therefore I've come to love wolves because of her. Funny how that happens. Interesting fur. There was a particular dog. Actually, Julie has a dog, and it's very, very, very curly fur. It's actually hair, I think, because it grows, and then they have to shave it off.
My turn.
Yeah.
Feelings. That was hard. Feelings for me as a kid. My parents split up when I was 5. And my mom was and is mentally unstable, and I stayed with her. And I honestly don't have a memory of her responding to me crying as a child. I don't know if that's blocked for me, but I remember crying and crying and crying in bed at night. We often shared a bed or a room, just more for financial reasons than anything else. But I would wait till she was asleep, and I would just cry. And I remember feeling so frustrated because I never really, I couldn't tell what I was crying about. And I was just really, really sad.
Yeah, a lot to be sad about.
She was not well. And she's someone that was very unpredictable emotionally and would do very cruel things to people when she was angry. And I think that's where my fear of being angry comes from. I'm like, it's funny because it doesn't trigger me in my children when they're angry. And it's been really, really interesting to watch. I think I was so sad for so long and so unhappy. I mean, I was not happy as a child, and I so want my boys to be happy. And I definitely read about attachment parenting when I was pregnant and tried so hard. Like, I just truly felt like if Jonah was crying, that meant that I was doing something wrong. And mostly it's just like I think about how scared I was of her being angry, and like anger doesn't feel safe to me at all. It's like really scary. And I still don't know how to be angry. And I still like guilt is something that I feel all the time. I mean, I feel like I've been driven by emotions, by like fear and guilt for much of my life. And the biggest thing that I see myself doing is like trying so hard not to do whatever I can so that my kids don't do that. But I often just react too strongly in the other direction because I'm just...
Because you had a difficult time when you were young.
Certainly, she was not in a position to be able to listen to me about my feelings. Hers were overwhelming for her. After Galen was born, I had postpartum depression really bad. And I think the worst part was that I was just so scared that it happened. I was totally overwhelmed with my own feelings and I couldn't be present in the way that I wanted to be. It's really hard. Like, it's so much better. I mean, it's not an issue anymore, but for the first year of his life, like, I was so sad again. So yeah, I mean, when Jonah cries, when Galen cries, they both do it so differently. It's interesting, like, Galen kind of gives up, my little guy. You know, he just crumples into a little heap on the floor, and that's honestly a lot harder for me than Jonah, who it's kind of like mixed up with rage. And I think I watch them and it's like I see Jonah fighting for himself, and I'm like, I know that I wish I had been able to as a kid, and so that's a lot easier for me to handle than when I see Galen, who starts to get upset and he just falls. He wants to collapse on the floor and he'll stop crying, you know, like, and it's that's really hard. Like, trying to figure out how to help him release his feelings has been a big challenge for me, because they're there, and you know, the same thing will pop up again and again. But if I try to stay with him, you know, it's usually around his brother, not giving him something or having taken something, and I was never comfortable with children before, and I think it's because of that, because I was so unhappy as a kid.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
Question time?
Please.
Okay. Name 3 lakes anywhere on this planet.
Lake Tahoe, June Lake, which I've never been to, but we're going to next month, and Spring Lake. We were camping there this last weekend.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds like a fun place to be.
It was good.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Thank you.
Do you need another question?
No, that's
You're
good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.